Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for being with us today. Then now we shall start the 2021 policy Science and ICT Policy Day. And my name is Moon Sori. I will be your master of ceremony for today's Science and ICT Policy Day. And I was able to join everyone following from last year. And during our farewells last year, I said that I was looking forward to meet you in person next year. But due to the COVID-19 situation, we unfortunately could not invite in our honorable diplomats and have to meet everyone through a video this year as well. However, I'm very happy that a session to share the policies of Korean Ministry of Science and ICT and search for method to cooperate online. So now first we shall open the doors of today's Science and ICT Policy Day with a welcome remarks from the Minister, Her Excellency Im Hye-suk of the Ministry of Science and ICT, Republic of Korea, the administrator of today's event. Let us take a look.
Good afternoon. I'm Hye-suk Im, the Minister of Science and ICT. I would like to thank Your Excellencies ambassadors and diplomats for joining the 2021 Science and ICT Policy Day. It is regretful that I'm greeting you through this video just like last year, unable to meet with you in person due to COVID-19. Today's event will be about introducing the government's science and ICT policies and sharing relevant ideas and insights. The world has been faced with great challenges due to COVID-19 since last year and has been working hard to return to normal. But despite the crisis and amidst efforts for recovery, countries have been developing and distributing vaccines and treatments, achieving innovation and global cooperation in the field of science and ICT. The current climate and environment crisis that we all face can also be overcome through innovation in science and ICT, aimed at carbon neutrality and cooperation implemented by the world. To successfully overcome the pandemic and the climate crisis, we need more innovation in science and ICT and closer global collaboration. For each country to attain sustainable development going beyond the crisis, we need to transcend borders through digital innovation, connect as a global community, and realize shared growth. To this end, the Korean government joined the G20 summit and COP26, expressing its commitment for inclusive digital transformation and carbon neutrality to implement the SDGs. As the ministry in charge of science and ICT, we have been striving to live up to this commitment. We've been pursuing the Digital New Deal policy, leading digital transformation that will recover the economy and facilitate innovation in the society. We devised strategies for technology innovation for carbon neutrality, supporting development of advanced green energy technology free of CO2 emissions. Going forward, we'll drive innovation in science and ICT and strengthen diplomatic relations to share the fruit with the global community. I hope this seminar on science and ICT innovation, Digital New Deal, and diplomatic policy in this sector proves to be informative and asks for your valuable insight. As the African saying goes, if you want to go far, go together. For mankind's co-prosperity, we need to work in solidarity and cooperation. And I hope you will be the bridges for that cooperation. I hope this seminar serves as a meaningful opportunity to put our heads together for science and ICT policies for a better future for all. Once again, thank you for your participation. Thank you very much.
who put in great efforts for the development of Korean science and technology left us warm words of greeting. Thank you very much once again, the Minister Lim. Moreover, the President Min Won-gi of the State University of New York, who is the Ambassador of Science and Technology Cooperation, is joining us online on behalf of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He will be giving a speech celebrating today's Science and ICT Policy Day. Please take a look.
Ambassadors and distinguished participants, good afternoon. I am Min Won-gi, Ambassador for Science, Technology and Innovation of the Republic of Korea. First of all, I would like to deliver my greetings to Her Excellency Minister Im Hae-suk of the Ministry of Science and ICT, Ambassador Carlos Victor Bongu of Gabon, Dean of Diplomatic Corps in Korea, and all the diplomats and participants during the 2021 Science and ICT Policy Day event. It's my great honor to deliver a congratulatory remark at this meaningful event. By taking advantage of this opportunity, I also would like to express my deepest respect and appreciation to all the diplomats working for strengthening the cooperation between your country and Korea at this difficult time caused by the pandemic. Ambassadors, distinguished participants, we are living in a world where technology determines how we live. Arguably, the level of a country's science, technology, and innovation, so-called STI, determines the nation's economic competitiveness and its social living quality. The role of STI in addressing global challenges like climate change and the pandemic, as well as national social economic challenges such as aging population and job displacement, is not just gaining more attraction, but being recognized as a critical means to resolve the problems. Accordingly, there is an increasing demand to strengthen multilateral and bilateral cooperation in STI. And the pandemic has been a wake-up call for a better STI policy and more effective international STI cooperation. The pandemic teaches us that to resolve global challenges and crises, we need much stronger international collaboration in STI. Korea has long been a strong advocate for international collaboration in STI and has engaged in STI cooperation with many partner countries. At the opening session of the second Sustainable Development Goals moment in the UN, our President Moon Jae-in stressed that cooperation beyond the borders is the very first step to resolve global problems such as the COVID-19 pandemic and climate change. In particular, he said, guided by the conviction that no one is safe until everyone is safe, the Korean people will join the journey of inclusive international cooperation as your most reliable and steadfast companion, leaving no one behind. As former Vice Minister of the Ministry of Science and ICT, I witnessed the extraordinary outcomes of STI cooperation between Korea and many partner countries. My experience tells me that more things can be done by enhancing STI cooperation between countries. This year's Science and ICT Policy Day event presents Korea's STI policy on technology innovation, digital New Deal, and international cooperation. As Alexander Fleming once said, the more complex the world becomes, the more difficult it is to complete something without the cooperation with others. I hope that today's event can pave the way for strengthening the current cooperation and building new STI collaboration opportunities in the future between your countries and Korea. Thank you once again for having me in this meaningful event. Thank you very much.
Yes, the Ambassador Min Won-gi acts as a bridge so that the Korean science and technology will be able to develop through exchanges with foreign countries. I sincerely appreciate your being with us today through online. Lastly, the Dean of Diplomatic Corps, Ambassador of Gabon, will give us congratulatory remarks on behalf of the every diplomats residing in South Korea. Due to the COVID-19 situation, he was not able to make it in person here, but he sent off the video message. Shall we take a look?
Her Excellency Ms. Lim Hae-suk, Minister of Science and ICT. His Excellency Min Won-ki, Ambassador for Science, Technology and Innovation. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It is my honor to participate in the celebration of the 2021 Science and ICT Policy Day. I take this opportunity to congratulate the Ministry of Science and ICT of the Republic of Korea and the Office of the Ambassador for Science, Technology and Innovation for their efforts in addressing the important topic of science and ICT once again, despite the unprecedented circumstances of a COVID-19 pandemic that has impacted the entire planet over the past 2 years. Information and communication technologies are playing a significant role, particularly at this time when social distancing measures and travel restrictions have somehow shifted the paradigm in the conduct of world affairs. In the practice of diplomacy, science and ICT have facilitated the use of digital tools through social media and online conferences and meetings. While they are transforming the global economy, these technologies are also shaping our world with the emergence of new internet and digital challenges that include digital interdependence and sovereignty, cybersecurity, and data governance, among others. The Republic of Korea's Digital New Deal, aiming to lay the foundations for a digital economy that would lead to economic growth and innovation, should enable this country to strengthen its leadership in this sector and therefore reinforce ICT diplomacy cooperation among nations. With its position at the forefront of the fourth industrial revolution, its top ranking in connectivity, internet speed, and smartphone leadership, the Republic of Korea can play a major role in the use of digital technologies worldwide. As a member of a diplomatic community here in Korea, I look forward to the reinforcement of science and ICT cooperation to the extent that the new technologies can reinforce diplomatic interaction and contribute to overcome global challenges such as sustainable development, the empowerment of women, economic growth, and climate change. I wish you all a successful 2021 Science and ICT Policy Day. Thank you. 감사합니다.
Thank you very much. We watched the video message by the Ambassador, His Excellency Carlos Victor Bungu, and I hope he will watch the briefing presentation as well, being held today as the Shifudi method, cooperation method together. So now, everyone, we would like to start the policy presentation from now on. And before we start, I have an announcement to make, which please, to our viewers, which please press the button F5 to refresh file. Thank you very much for your cooperation. And today's briefing presentation is hosted by Korea's Ministry of Science and ICT. And each year, it invites diplomats from foreign missions in Korea to explain the main policies of the Korean government Ministry of Science and ICT. And before we start, I shall shortly go through the sequence of today's policy briefing presentation program. This policy briefing presentation will be held under a total of 3 topics: science and technology innovation, digital New Deal, and science and technology foreign policy. And first of all, Chung Hee-kwon, the Director General of the Science and Technology Policy Bureau, Ministry of Science and ICT, will give a presentation about Korea's science, technology, and innovation policy for a step forward. Following next, Kang Do-hyun, the Director General of the ICT Policy Bureau, will present on the creating a new wind of innovation in Korea, Digital New Deal. And lastly, Kim Sung-gyu, the Director General of International Cooperation Bureau, will present about enhancing science and ICT diplomatic cooperation. And after we finish all the presentation we have prepared for roughly 30 minutes, there will be time to answer questions collected in advance and questions that arose during the presentations. It would be appreciated if everyone stays with us until the very end of today's program and search for a method to cooperate in the field of science and technology. We would like to inform you that all presentations will be broadcasted by being simultaneously translated into English. However, during the Q&A session, we shall be utilizing the consecutive interpretation for an accurate communication and detailed response. Thank you very much for your cooperation. And then now we shall start the policy presentation. First of all, Chung Hee-kwon, the Director General of the Science and Technology Policy Bureau from the Ministry of Science and ICT Republic of Korea, will explain Korea's science, technology, and innovation policy for a step forward. So, Director General Chung, would you please start your presentation?
안녕하십니까. 과학기술정보통신부 과학기술정책국장 정의곤입니다. 오늘 이 자리에서 대한민국의 과학기술 정책에 대하여 소개하고 앞으로의 정책 방향을 말씀드리고자 합니다. 오늘의 발표의 주요 내용입니다. 먼저 대한민국의 과학기술 가버넌스와 과학기술 정보통신부의 기능에 대해서 소개드리겠습니다. 다음으로 한국의 R&D 환경과 과학기술 성과를 살펴보겠습니다. 마지막으로 한국 과학기술 정책의 과거, 현재, 미래에 대해서 말씀드리겠습니다.
I will talk about the past, present, and future of Korea's science and ICT-related policies. First of all, speaking of science and ICT governance, as you see in the slide, we have the Presidential Advisory Council on Science and Technology, which serves the functions of policy advisory and coordination. And different ministries have their own R&D projects depending on their mandates. The Ministry of Science and ICT is in charge of establishing the national policies on science and ICT. And the ministry also carries out various R&D projects, and it manages the nation's R&D projects as well. The ministry's mission is to realize a people-centered fourth industrial revolution so as to develop future industries and to create quality jobs. Our investment is focused on big data, network, and AI-related projects which are deemed key in the fourth industrial revolution. Moreover, we are also making efforts to expand basic research and improve R&D system so that a favorable system or ecosystem is created to ensure future growth and innovation. We also want to make sure that R&D projects ultimately lead to improved quality of life for our citizens. Now, let me explain Korea's R&D landscape. Korea's R&D expenditure increased dramatically from 1.2 billion won in 1963 to almost 100 trillion won in 2021. Up until the 1980s, the government was the major investor of R&D projects, but the private investment started to grow, and since 1980s, private sector R&D has played a pivotal role in the nation's R&D endeavors. Government's R&D continued to expand in times of national difficulties, such as the financial crisis in 1997 and in 2008, so that it can lift the country out of the crisis. As was discussed earlier, the Korean government has prioritized and therefore increased its investment in science and ICT-related research and development. This can be confirmed by looking at the proportion of R&D budget to the GDP. As of 2018, the R&D investment to Korean GDP was estimated at 4.53%, which is the world's second largest, only after Israel. Such an intensive investment in R&D has enabled Korea to become one of the most innovative countries in the world. One notable aspect is the active investment in R&D of the private sector. In 2019, the private sector R&D reached $59.1 billion, accounting for 76.9% of Korea's total R&D spending. In particular, we are seeing large-scale investments happening in the manufacturing sector. Specifically, investment in electronics and ICT, both of which Korea has comparative advantages, account for 56% of total manufacturing R&D investment. By corporate size, investment made by SMEs and startups take a relatively smaller proportion, which is an area we need to see improvement. Korea has accumulated global top-tier science and ICT capabilities, and this can be verified by various indices. Since 2017, Korea was ranked number 1 in Bloomberg Innovation Index for a total of 7 times, and in 2019, it was ranked number 1 in OECD Digital Government Index. Korea's competitiveness can also be confirmed by looking at other indices, such as number of triadic patent families per year, the global share of SCI papers, and the number of researchers per 1,000 labor force. As such, based on the active R&D and solid science and ICT capabilities, Korea is leading the global high-tech industries. Numerous achievements have been made, including the world's first commercialization of 32-gig NAND flash memory and world's first 5G service, and development of antibody biosimilar for the first time in the world. Excellent technological prowess has made Korean companies to command number 1 market share in the global memory chips and smartphone markets. However, we do have some areas for improvement in terms of R&D productivity represented by technology trade balance ratio and global network-related indices. It is also imperative to devise strategies that will guide us to realize a successful green transition to achieve sustainable growth. Now I'd like to briefly walk you through the history of Korean government's science and ICT policies. Previously, our policy was geared toward catching up with the advanced countries. But now we intend to become a market leader, leveraging the technological expertise accumulated for the past decades. In the 60s and 70s, when the nation focused its energy on developing its economy, the main priority was to establish basic R&D infrastructure. To pursue technological development in key industries in this period, public research institutes were created to lay a foundation to achieve technological independence. 1980s and 80s and 90s saw active development of high technologies. This is when private companies and universities started to undertake R&D projects in earnest. Driven by growing government support, steelmaking, shipbuilding, and semiconductors and cell phones became Korea's backbone industries. Since 2000, we moved away from our catching-up strategies to implement policies to foster innovation to become a technology leader. As a result, Korea has now become a major powerhouse in ICT, such as mobile phones and 5G network. Let me now turn to the Ministry's 4th National Science and Technology Basic Plan. As you understand, the overarching objective of this plan is to go beyond development of science and ICT to achieve economic development, but to pursue quality of life and contribute to the global humanity by further investment of ICT. 4 key strategies in this basic plan are as below. First is to build science and ICT capacity to tackle future challenges. We plan to create an environment where researchers are encouraged and motivated to engage in creative research activities. Second is to foster an active science and ICT innovation ecosystem. And measures to promote collaboration projects and to support innovative startups are included in the basic plan. The third is to facilitate science and technology-led job creation in new industries. Amid what we call the fourth industrial revolution, we will continue to nurture new industries and create quality jobs. The last one is to create a better life for all through science and ICT. This is important as we envision a warm and inclusive society realized by science and ICT. From now on, I will describe Korea's recent achievements made by some key science and ICT policies. I will first talk about the National Research and Development Innovation Law that was enacted earlier this year. The law aims to create an environment where the autonomy and creativity of researchers are respected and researchers can concentrate on their work. A key aspect of this law is that it recognized and streamlined or reorganized and streamlined R&D-related legal structure. Before it was enacted, different government ministries and agencies had different R&D regulations, and researchers had to be familiar with all those regulations. And now, with the enactment of this law, we now have a single act and its subordinate rules. Moreover, the law facilitates creation of researcher-friendly R&D environment. National R&D procedures have been simplified so as to reduce the administrative burden of researchers. An integrated R&D information system has been set up across the ministries so that researchers have easy access to information that's related to carrying out their projects. Moreover, we will continue to instill the spirit of challenge and encourage researchers to try again even if they fail in their initial trials. The government's support for basic research has expanded so as to encourage researchers to be more creative and challenge the establishment. Under the current administration, government expenditure on basic research has grown on a steady manner. Our goal is to double the basic research budget from 2017 to 2022. And the plan is going as planned. And we also have established support programs for different basic research areas, which are being expanded to include other fields. Given the total amount of budget for different fields, representative academic institutes of different disciplines can now plan on their own project structure and support scheme. The project was piloted in the field of mathematics in 2020, and there are 6 disciplines supported in this way in 2021, and it will be expanded to include all basic research in 2022. There are also policies that target innovation capacity improvement at SMEs. First of all, we are increasing the support for R&D effort of SMEs. Under the current administration, R&D support for SMEs grew continuously and more than doubled between 2017 and 2019. We also developed systemized support system according to the growth cycle of companies. What's also important here is that projects developed by SMEs' R&D efforts are purchased in the market so that these companies can continue to innovate. To this end, we introduced trial purchase program on projects developed by or product developed by SMEs and are helping them to secure sales channels by expanding public procurement. We also encourage open innovation and promote joint R&D among industry, academia, and research institute. Aerospace is one area where we are pursuing active R&D. In Newly, the Korea Space Launch Vehicle 2 was launched on October 21st. It was the first test of the launch vehicle independently developed with our own technology from engine design and assembly to test and launch. Although the payload did not achieve the orbital speed, but we were able to secure the key technologies, and it is marked as an important turning point for the development of aerospace technology. We are going to have the second launch in May next year, and will become the 7th country in the world that will have the capability to launch a payload that's more than 1 ton in weight. Another objective of advancing science and ICT is to contribute to solving global challenges. One example is carbon neutrality. In November this year, during the COP26 meetings, President Moon Jae-in announced Korea would increase its 2030 NDC. In order to be aligned with global efforts, Korea is implementing systemized policies for advancing science and ICT. First of all, we have developed a detailed technology innovation plan to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. Considering demands of different industries, we've identified 10 key technologies and came up with strategies to secure those technologies. For those 10 key industries or technologies, we will devise detailed development targets and strategies to achieve those targets by 2050, and this will be used as a blueprint for future R&D. Going forward, creating an innovation ecosystem is critical so that technologies for carbon neutrality are actually used to reduce CO2 emissions. To this end, more support will be provided to demonstration and commercialization efforts and to nurture professionals with expertise on carbon neutrality. Now, let me switch to the future of Korea's science and ICT policies. Korean policies will be expanded so that it could be used to facilitate innovation. Basically, in addition to promoting and developing advanced technology, we also aim to use science and ICT to solve national and social issues. Moreover, the performance target will have not only quantitative criteria, but also qualitative criteria to review policy impacts on our society. When it comes to the scope of policies, we will include non-R&D policy instruments, such as deregulation, to create an environment that is conducive to innovation. All those changes that I just mentioned will be reflected in the 5th National Science and Technology Basic Plan that is being drawn up right now. In the 5th Basic Plan, there are 4 key strategies of recovery, inclusiveness, survival, and innovation. And the strategies are closely tied to various social and economic issues such as digital transformation, aging, carbon neutrality, and climate crisis response, and creating R&D foundation. So these are the 4 strategies of the 5th Basic Plan. First, recovery is about strengthening resilience in order to achieve fast economic recovery in the wake of a crisis. Second, inclusiveness is to improve quality of life by building a strong social safety net. Third, survival is about cooperating in our response to global crises in order to ensure survival of our nation. And lastly, innovation is to reinforce the National Foundation for Science and Technology, R&D. In Korea, science and ICT policies have played a pivotal role in achieving remarkable economic prosperity. Now it will be pursued so that we can contribute to the global community. With that, I'll finish my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We listen to the direction of Korea's science, technology, and innovation policy. Being faced with the digital transformation of society, the Korean government announced the Digital New Deal policy. That is why this time we go over creating a new wind of innovation in Korea, Digital New Deal. Director General Kang Do-hyun of the ICT Policy Bureau from the Ministry of Science and ICT Republic of Korea will be presenting. So, Director General Kang, just this floor is yours, so please start.
안녕하십니까?
Afternoon. I am Do-hyun Kang, the Director General for ICT Policy of the Ministry of Science, Technology and ICT. I'm pleased to be able to introduce Korea's Digital New Deal policy. I'll brief you on the key aspects of the Digital New Deal, which is a key policy of the Korean government. This is my agenda. I will first explain the background of the Digital New Deal, moving on to the key aspects, goal, and main projects. And I will touch upon the achievements until now and the Digital New Deal 2.0 announced this July. Let me first discuss the background of why we embarked on the Digital New Deal. The Fourth Industrial Revolution and COVID-19 have caused a great upheaval around the world. Both digital and energy transformation are crucial in meeting the call of the times. But today, let me focus on digital transformation. The Korean government has been making multifaceted efforts, including policy development in response to the Fourth Industrial Revolution. In October 2017, the Presidential Committee on the Fourth Industrial Revolution was launched. In August 2018, we declared the transition to the data economy. In April 2019, the world's first commercial 5G service was launched in Korea. In 2019, our AI initiatives were refined to establish the National AI Strategy. In terms of law and institution, in January 2020, the three major data laws were amended. As such, a series of policies have been implemented to prepare against the Fourth Industrial Revolution. To overcome the economic crisis caused by COVID-19 and lead the grand digital transition, the Korean government is striving to achieve innovation based on data, network, and AI, in short, DNA, to create new jobs and opportunity for economic growth. This is the gist of the Digital New Deal. Let me now delve into the key aspects of the Digital New Deal. As you know, the New Deal was originally a set of economic revitalization policies to overcome the Great Depression of the 30s in the U.S. It was about creating jobs to overcome the current crisis and facilitate industrialization, to lay key infrastructure to respond to the future society. Based on this notion, Korea tapped into our strengths to derive a large-scale national innovation project called the Korean New Deal. The Korean New Deal is a comprehensive plan that comprises the three pillars of Digital New Deal, Green New Deal, and Local New Deal on top of the foundation of strengthening employment and social safety net. Digital New Deal is a new policy that combines untagged or contactless to spread online commerce and remote work, digitization, the key element of national competitiveness, and digital innovation by ICT, Korea's core competency, to accelerate the digital economy and promote economic dynamics. This is what Digital New Deal is about. As we embarked on the Korean New Deal last July, President Moon clarified its goal, saying, "If we combine our digital capabilities across all industries, we can transform from a chasing economy to a leading economy." To achieve the goal by 2025, the government will invest around $39 billion to 12 main projects in the four Digital New Deal strategies of strengthening the DNA ecosystem, digital transformation of education infrastructure, fostering contactless industries, and digitization of SOC. What you see right now is the overall scheme of the Digital New Deal. First, the data dam. Data from the public and private sectors will be collected via network, including 5G, standardized and processed to build a data dam that can be utilized by AI. Based on the data dam, innovative AI-based services, including smart factory, intelligent crime analysis, and energy reduction will be created. To facilitate data collection, distribution, and utilization, cloud, IoT, and infrastructure will be expanded. And the virtual convergence economy that expands our economic territory through metaverse and blockchain will be expanded. Cybersecurity will be strengthened, and the security industry will be fostered as well. Let me move on to the Digital New Deal's goal and main projects for the 4 strategies. The first strategy is strengthening the DNA ecosystem. We'll collect 1,300 types of AI training data sets and promote the collection, disclosure, and utilization of data closely related to people's lives. We'll increasingly converge 5G to the public sector, autonomous vehicles and ships, and expand the AI plus X project, applying AI to industrial sites. We'll realize a smart government based on 5G and AI by building the nationwide 5G network. By 2025, we'll provide security consulting services to 6,800 SMEs and improve cybersecurity by inspecting for software vulnerabilities in advance. The second strategy is digital transformation of education infrastructure. We'll build high-speed Wi-Fi infrastructure for primary, middle, and high schools nationwide, and integrated online education platform. Online education systems of universities and job training institutions will be reinforced. We'll improve the education improvement of national universities by modernizing network equipment and increase quality contents of K-MOOC, Korea's online open lecture platform. We will also increase contents for STEP, the public smart job training platform, as well. The third strategy is fostering the contactless industries. We'll build smart healthcare and care infrastructure. We'll develop Dr. Answer, the AI-based diagnosis software, increase the number of smart hospitals to 18, and leverage IoT and AI devices to provide digital care to 150,000 underprivileged people. SMEs work at home will be expanded as well. We'll provide vouchers to help 140,000 SMEs to utilize telecommuting solutions and build communal video conference rooms. We'll also support online commerce of micro-businesses, helping them open online stores and building 100,000 smart stores applied with advanced technologies such as 5G and AI. The fourth strategy is digitization of SOC. We'll build a smart management system for key infrastructure, compile 3D maps and precision roadmaps for autonomous driving, and set up an integrated wireless railway network. We'll also adopt the real-time monitoring and control system for national rivers and streams. We'll upgrade digital innovation of urban spaces. We'll build pilot smart cities in Busan and Sejong and provide smart city solutions to 70 cities. We'll promote the smart logistics system. Around 100 smart logistics centers, including the smart logistics center shared by SMEs, will be built. Finally, I'll talk about the achievements of the Digital New Deal and Digital New Deal 2.0. Through the Digital New Deal, the Korean government was the first in the world to build the data dam, and Korea became the first country to enact the Data Framework Act, revitalizing new digital industries and ecosystem of the private sector. We injected 10.1 trillion won of Digital New Deal budget to build digital infrastructure, announced 34 policy directions supporting Digital New Deal, and improved 124 regulations. We completed the key legislative work, including the 3 major data laws and the Data Framework Act. To facilitate private investment, we raised a fund of 4 trillion won. Data Dam, the prime example of the Digital New Deal, has been leading to tangible results. 191 AI training datasets of 8 domains were built and opened, based on which 53 services were refined with AI and we also applied for 28 patents that were granted, demonstrating the global recognition we're getting. The Data Framework Act, enacted for the first time in the world in October 2021, is the core foundation of the data economy. It provides legal ground to set up data control towers, nurture data traders and data specialized companies, and ensure data values and rights. We also improved regulation to promote new private sector industries. Based on the ICT regulatory sandbox, 124 regulatory exceptions were set up. This resulted in a revenue growth of 55.1 billion won, 1,322 new employment, and an investment of 80.3 billion won attracted. Leading examples include the shared kitchen and taxi pooling brokerage service. Innovative attempts blocked by regulation were allowed, improving the convenience of the general public. Digital New Deal has been joined by businesses as well as attested by investment and participation. Hyperscale AI, data centers, 5G network, and other digital infrastructure have been expanded as a result. Naver, KT, SKT, and LG set up AI research centers, making massive investment in hyperscale AI, and are building 28 data centers nationwide. The 3 major telecommunication companies announced an investment of 25 trillion won over the period of 3 years to build a 5G network. Digital New Deal promotes economic recovery and innovation, ensuring that everyone benefits from digital transformation. First, most participants in relevant projects are SMEs, which shows that these projects are revitalizing their potential. It facilitated the growth of new industries. Key software companies joined the Data Dam project, and the number of AI suppliers in Korea more than quadrupled, and data suppliers tripled. The data market grew by more than 14% in 2020 from 2019. We supported the digital transformation of around 100,000 non-ICT companies and nurtured 30,000 digital talents for the future. We also provided digital literacy education to around 480,000 people. Based on the achievements, in July this year, the Korean government newly announced the Digital New Deal 2.0 that expands investment budget to $42.6 billion by 2025. The 4 areas of Digital New Deal 1.0 will be revamped and consolidated to redefine 4 strategies of Digital New Deal 2.0, The strategies for education, infrastructure, and contactless industry are consolidated as the strategy for advancing the contactless infrastructure and the strategy of fostering the hyper-connected industries, including metaverse and cloud, is newly added. Digital New Deal 2.0 will be implemented in 3 directions. Based on digital infrastructure, including data dam and 5G, will increase private-led utilization. Outcomes of projects will be shared nationwide and by all industries. Will support global expansion, going beyond the domestic market, and nurture new industries, including metaverse. The great digital transition caused by the fourth industrial revolution is an irreversible trend. I believe the time is ripe for us to make a new leap forward with digital transformation. Korea will work with you going forward to prepare for the future through the great digital transition. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Director General Kang. Many people of the nation are hoping for the success of the new Digital New Deal policy so that the safety net of society can be established using digital as a foundation and the digital benefit can be returned throughout a society. Thank you so much once again for the great presentation. And lastly, everyone, Kim Sung-kyu, the Director General of International Cooperation Bureau, give us a presentation about enhancing science and ICT diplomacy cooperation. So, the Director General Kim, would you please start your presentation?
안녕하십니까. 과학기술정보통신부 국제협력관 김성규입니다. 저는 오늘 이 자리에서 한국 과학기술 외교정책의 추진 경과와 정책 방향을 여러분에게 말씀드리고자 합니다.
Going forward. So as the diplomatic efforts in the area of science and technology are getting all the more important, I will describe how the ministry is working on the top 5 priorities as key focus area. In 2019, the Ministry of Science and ICT and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs set forth strategies for science and ICT diplomacy with a vision to make Korea an innovative and inclusive society. We came up with 4 strategies to achieve 3 goals of innovative growth, global prosperity, and well-being of the humanity. And one is to lead global agendas. Second is to contribute to sustainable development of the global community. The third is to work to ensure well-being and quality of life of global citizens. And fourth is to build a better system for science and ICT diplomacy. Based on these strategies, the Ministry of Science and ICT have actively pursued cooperation with partner countries and will continue to invest our energy to boost science and ICT diplomacy. The goals that we put forward in 2019, namely innovative growth, global prosperity, and well-being of the humanity, are still very much relevant today. When faced with healthcare crisis posed by the pandemic, as well as sluggish economic growth, we once again realized the importance of science and technological innovation, and innovation does require close international cooperation. Mr. Peter Glungman, President of International Science Council, recently mentioned science is more important than ever. We strongly believe that we are at a crossroads, and international cooperation in science and ICT will determine the future growth of Korea and its partner countries. Currently, the global community is facing some serious issues, such as infectious disease, climate change, and cyber warfare, which can be addressed through technological development. At the same time, there are new challenges that occur with the emergence of new technologies. The advent of new technologies in the fourth industrial revolution, such as AI and the metaverse, can open up many new opportunities, and many countries around the world will enjoy new growth opportunities. Against this backdrop, we'd like to bring your attention to 2 perspectives. First, global threats that know no borders cannot be dealt with by a single country. The international community must get together and respond collectively. Second, we want to ensure that the benefits brought by new technologies are shared among countries around the world, and this will require a sustainable and inclusive approach. With these in mind, let me now introduce current policies and future directions of Korea's science and ICT. There are 5 main policies that are being implemented in terms of science and ICT diplomacy. I'll explain in the order of infrastructure, international joint research, ODA, invitation of researchers, and participation in international organizations. First, we strengthened the foundation for supporting science and ICT diplomacy. One project that's been materialized is the establishment of the Science and ICT Diplomacy Center established at Key Step, and the center will identify global issues related to science and ICT diplomacy strategies and train experts in this field. Moreover, we have appointed Mr. Min Won-gi, incumbent president of State University of New York in Korea, as an ambassador for science, technology, and innovation. He is responsible for supporting the government science and technology diplomatic mission. And he will communicating with domestic and overseas private sector experts. Speaking of the joint research, so far, most joint researches have been conducted on a bilateral basis in all scientific fields. We've established 52 bilateral joint research centers, partnered with 52 institutes in 12 countries. Moving forward, there will be 3 main directions we want to pursue for international joint studies. First, there will be a stronger support for strategic technologies that are deemed to become future growth engines such as bio and renewable energy. And our existing programs have been adjusted in order to promote multilateral projects, and projects that are linked to sustainable development goals will enjoy greater support. Support for multilateral projects increased starting from this year, and to give you an example, there is a joint project on climate change response between Korea, US, and Vietnam. Now I'd like to talk about ODA. Another area we want to focus more is the expansion of ODA for science and ICT so that we can contribute to global common prosperity. We have mostly provided our policy experience based on our know-how on developing the ICT sector, and we will continue to support R&D activities that are promising to solve global issues, and will also increase its budget. Our ODA budget was 19.5 billion Korean won in 2021, which is about 0.59% of the total ODA budget in Korea.
대표적인
These are leading examples of successful ODA projects. We supported Vietnam to develop rainwater purification technology, Tanzania to develop photovoltaic energy system technology, and build a digital production center in Myanmar. Especially 3D printers were used for producing medical masks in responding to COVID-19 recently. This is a prime example of addressing a pending global issue through ODA. As part of our efforts to make ODA projects more systematic, we'll build a statistics system for science and ICT ODA projects nationwide. Until now, we didn't have a statistics system for ODA projects in this sector. While the level of interest and need for project monitoring increased, there were many challenges to track projects. In the future, to accurately identify the current status, we will adopt the definition and criteria of science and ICT ODA, and especially considering the characteristics of science and ICT, we're considering the use of a marker system. For example, the Rio marker for environment and gender marker for gender equality that will be benchmarked to set up a statistics system. The system is expected to ensure accurate diagnosis of science and ICT ODA projects and help us establish appropriate strategy. Ultimately, this will raise the effectiveness overall science and ICT ODA. And after we validate the system in Korea, we're planning to engage in relevant discussion in international organizations. Next, let me introduce our scientist exchange projects for cooperation in science and ICT. A leading project is the Brainpool program. So we have been supporting these exchanges through this program and also supported advanced overseas researchers stay in Korea. Since its launch in 1994, we've invited more than 2,000 overseas researchers. Brainpool Plus supports up to 10-year stay for renowned overseas researchers. Since its launch in 2020, around 10 high-level researchers were invited as part of the program. Going forward, our exchanges will be focused on core technologies as in the case of joint research. A good example is the BrainLink program that will begin next year. BrainLink is a program that supports Korean researchers in the field of core technologies such as AI, semiconductors, and biotech for their research overseas. It will also support technology exchanges among researchers, and the total budget is 7.3 billion won. Researcher exchange in STEM has been a significant agenda in various recent bilateral and multilateral summits and meetings for Korea. In the future, we will expand exchange to lay the foundation for global cooperation to achieve innovation in science and ICT. Korea has been proactively participating in international organizations to play its parts in global discussions on science and ICT. Especially, we've been consistently striving to contribute to AI-related work in OECD CDEP. In October, in the AI public event held in link with MCM Part 2, we shared our progress regarding data dam and OECD's AI principles, including AI ethics standards. We'll support both human and physical resources for the WPAI to be set up early next year. In terms of STI system cooperation, we introduced Korea's policy examples such as the strategy for carbon neutrality technology innovation and the direction for the fifth basic plan on science and ICT. In the G20, we emphasized the importance of digital transformation for sustainable and inclusive recovery and shared our digital transformation experience, including the Digital New Deal with the global community. On December 1st, we hosted the 2021 Ict Ministerial Meeting under the theme Digital Connectivity. We confirmed the common goal of rebuilding an inclusive society through digital and announced the chair's statement promising strengthened cooperation in the future. Korea will host next year's UN ESCAP Ict Ministerial Meeting as well. It will mark the 75th anniversary of ESCAP and address ways to strengthen digital cooperation in the Asia-Pacific region. I ask for your interest in this regard. Given the nature of new technology where a single international order does not exist, multilateral discussion on science and technology will ensue under various methods and topics. Korea greatly values multilateral discussion and cooperative projects in science and ICT. We will continue to proactively participate in international organizations and various global discussions. I hope we can share this recognition and work together with participating countries today. Meanwhile, Korea recently declared the candidacy for the position of Deputy Secretary General of ITU. In the 2022 ITU Plenipotentiary Conference, Korea is running for the position of a council member state and nominated Dr. Jae-sub Lee as the candidate for the Deputy Secretary General. We will continue to provide support so one of our eminent experts in Korea could play a key role on the global stage to make contributions. Driven by the 5 key science and ICT diplomacy policy explained today, our ministry will continue to strengthen global cooperation in this field. Through inclusive utilization of science and ICT, we will contribute to shared global growth and co-prosperity going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Director General Kim, for your presentation. Yes, we were able to have precious time to examine what areas of science and technology could cooperate in with foreign countries. We cordially ask for the attention of the diplomats of each country viewing this session. Now let us talk in more details through a Q&A session. For a Q&A, due to the time consideration, we'll select questions of policies in the field of science, technology, and ICT received in prior to and during the presentation. This will be in Korean on site. Thank you so much for your understanding. 자, 그럼 지금부터 질의응답
So we
갖겠습니다.
are going to have a Q&A session. First, I will ask some questions to the first speaker, Director General Jung Hee-kwon. There are 3 questions we have received in advance. First question is, how do you plan to address the growing inequality and alienation of vulnerable population when establishing science and ICT policies? So, Director General Jung. We have the master plan for science and ICT policies, which is the 4th Science and ICT Basic Plan. And the purpose of this plan is to realize a warm and inclusive society. We want to make sure that we improve the quality of life of the vulnerable population, and we are also implementing policies to address the digital divide. For example, we are developing AI care robot for senior citizens suffering from senile dementia. And we are also working with the local libraries and citizen centers to provide digital literacy related training. We are also making sure that people have access to science and ICT education. We are expanding science education for students from low-income families, and we are also working with the Museum of Science so that we can have these students to have science-related experience. And the 5th basic plan is now being established, and inclusiveness will be the main keyword. And we will leverage science and technology in order to strengthen social safety net for the vulnerable citizens. Thank you very much for your answer. So you are working on another.
두 번째 질문 이어서 드리겠습니다.
This is the second question. So we understand that in Korea, we have very active private sector R&D activities. What is the role of the private sector R&D vis-a-vis the government's R&D expenditure? Korean R&D is estimated to worth around 100 trillion. The government spends about 30 trillion, and the private sector spends about 70 trillion Korean won. If you look at the government R&D investment, we have a mid and long-term R&D investment strategies, and there are different roles played by the government sector and the private sector depending on the industry. In key industries, we are seeing a lot of private sector investment, and the objective is to increase global competitiveness. And the government is more geared to making investments for developing next generation and core technologies for future industries, because there is a high likelihood of failure. We do not expect a lot of private sector investment. So the government provides short-term R&D support, and we also provide incentives to attract private sector investment. For the public infrastructure And for areas that is closely linked to quality of environment or quality of life, we do not expect large-scale investment from the private sector. So that's why the government is leading the R&D investment. Also, the government is leading the R&D investment support so that we can strengthen the capabilities of main agents innovation. Thank you very much for your answer. Now, last question to Mr. Zhang. What are some of the differences between the fourth Science and ICT Basic Plan and the fifth Basic Plan? So, Mr. Zhang? We see various challenges, and technology and science can play an important role to solve all those problems. We are seeing acceleration in digital transformation because of COVID-19, and there are global issues such as climate change. If you look at the draft fifth basic plan, we aim to address all those social issues, and we also plan to achieve national innovation, economic recovery, and survival of the nation and the humanity. Compared to the fourth plan, innovation is highlighted in leveraging science and technology to solve social issues, and the scope of what we want to achieve has expanded. Not just the development of science and ICT, but further advancement of science and ICT for innovation will be pursued in the fifth basic plan.
기술 측면에 있어서도
To actual technologies, we will review policies of other countries and domestic overseas R&D status and the local R&D capabilities, and will select some key technologies that we will promote and nurture. So we understand the fifth basic plan is now being devised. Mr. Zhang provided additional information on the fifth basic plan. Please kindly refer to the details so that we can have stronger cooperation.
국장님께
I'll move on to Director General of ICT Policy, Mr. Do-hyun Kang. You have presented on the Digital New Deal, so we have more questions. We have 4 in total. First, is there a discussion platform on the issue of human-centered AI addressing basic rights and values such as privacy, dignity, and human autonomy in Korea? Please go ahead. There are achievements from technological development and negative side effects from that. And one of the most difficult area to access is AI, as I know of. That is why social consensus is all the more important for this domain. And just like was mentioned in the question, a discussion platform would be very important. Regarding AI-related legislation, the Korean government, starting from last year, encouraged the participation of experts and the public in our working group on AI legislation. And the ethical guideline by the OECD and G7 will be made more specific to has been made more specific to come up with Korea's ethical standard on AI. Going forward, we will enable more comprehensive participation in discussion forums, and next year, online forums joined by the public will be shared by everyone, so we can discuss not only technological development, as well, but also the negative side effects, including the important issue of ethics. Thank you very much. We're living in the era of AI, so we need to think about various programs to enable the coexistence of people and AI, and I think the government is getting ready for this. The next question is regarding digital inclusiveness. I think this is similar to the previous question to Mr. Chung. Here's the question. During ICT policymaking, what are your considerations to address increasing inequality and marginalization of the digitally illiterate? Gap is experienced by any country. It is a serious issue. In the past, the root cause was income gap, but going forward, digital gap in terms of social integration and strengthened competitiveness will be the key aspect. In our pursuit of the Digital New Deal, the Korean government has making policies to resolve the digital gap as well. First of all, to provide digital education nationwide, we are operating a training center for digital skills, 1,000 of them nationwide, and we are also building Wi-Fi networks to traffic facilities, and in school areas of rural regions, we are strengthening telecommunication infrastructure to provide equal level of education nationwide and raise the access to digital devices. Recently, kiosks that have been increasingly used in society must be more friendlier to the disabled and the elderly, so we are coming up with programs for that. Yes, it is imperative that everyone has a fair share of the benefits from digital transformation. So the third question is, what is the general principle in Sandbox policies aimed at promoting innovation? Because for IT companies, deregulation would be very important. This would be about improving regulations. We do have elite sportsmen, but also amateur sportsmen, and also the laymen. And Sandbox is where we allow all of these people to play a fair game together. So we have startups that have recently started their businesses that have great ideas, but find it difficult to go global or start a new business. So Sandbox is the policy for these people and companies. It is about allowing first and regulating later on. We reformed the regulatory system to allow new products and technology to be launched in the market first and regulated if necessary later on. So even when existing law bans a new offering, provided that the offering doesn't threaten lives and safety, we at least set up a special measure to permit testing or demonstration to confirm its commercial viability. Thank you very much.
Of course, as was mentioned, we want to make sure that we create an environment where companies can freely engage in their business activities. Many countries around the world are nurturing startup companies, and the last question is related to startup nurture. What are some of the tests that the government has to pursue in order to nurture startup companies by young people?
So in any country, the youth are the leaders of the future. The future of Korea also lies on the shoulders of our youth, and Korea's competitiveness lies in the competitiveness of our youth startups. Until now, the Korean government have been providing various support programs for startups and venture companies. And one of the lessons that we have learned from the experience is first, these startups need to think about going global from the initial stage to succeed. And secondly, we need to set up a safety net so the youth won't be afraid of making mistakes. And third, we need to help peer groups to share and collaborate, exchanging ideas and information in different domains. That would be the platform for success. So taking this in mind, the Korean government recently announced new youth support programs to succeed in the global market. We plan to expand exchanges for the youth with overseas businesses and universities, and to help them be bold, we are going to make the qualification for government support programs more lenient and also build the digital youth residence where the youth will be given priority to move into start up new businesses and live. At the same time, to encourage information exchange, we will establish a foundation comprised of experienced digital business leaders to share know-how and build a network. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your answers. I think exchange and communication are key, be it in person or in virtual. I hope that foreign missions in Korea will work with the Korean government in order to make a platform for exchange and cooperation. Now, I would like to ask some questions to Director General Kim Sung-kyu. I have two questions about diplomacy. First question is, what will be some of the key areas you believe more cooperation is needed next year? So, Mr. Kim, please. Regardless of the areas of cooperation, if the pandemic situation is stabilized, we are going to increase in-person diplomacy efforts, and we will make sure that the proper foundation is made to that end. Around the world, we are seeing both competition and cooperation in developing high technology. Korea and many other countries around the world are actively developing high technologies such as bio, aerospace, and AI. A lot of activities are happening in Korea, and we always are seeking partners for such cooperation. In December this year, we are going to announce key strategic technologies to be promoted. Dr. Chung Hee-kwon, sitting next to me, will be the person making the announcement. And the plan will also include our plans for international cooperation. We hope to see more active cooperation with other countries in the area of high technology. At the same time, Korea is known for its good capability for developing applied science or applied technology, but there is a long way to go in terms of basic science or basic science research. Of course, it is important to provide more financial support for domestic research, but at the same time, we have to participate in the global research network to share knowledge and learn from others. So next year, we will actively pursue international cooperation in the area of basic science and basic research. And in order to support joint projects approved by the Joint Committee for Scientific and Technological Cooperation, we will make sure that we secure sufficient amount of budget. And as was already introduced during my presentation, we are going to launch the Brain Link project. Thank you very much for your answer. So, all those participants watching us live, please kindly consider the new ways of cooperation in high-tech area. This is the second question to you. When implementing science and ICT diplomacy, I believe cooperation with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is important. What kind of support programs do you have to this end? When I was explaining the ministry policies, I talked about the appointment of the Ambassador for Science, Technology and Innovation. The ambassador is appointed by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. However, the competent authority for ICT cooperation is the Ministry of Science and ICT. So the ministry will have close collaboration with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs as well as with the ambassadors. We expect the ambassador to have close communication with the private sector experts at home and abroad. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs have 40 overseas missions selected as hubs for science and ICT cooperation. These 40 overseas missions will make efforts in order to strengthen cooperation in the area of science and ICT. In these overseas missions, there will be many activities, and the Ministry of Science and ICT will provide necessary information for the activities conducted by these overseas missions. So we do already have close collaboration with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. In 2019, we worked with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to establish the cooperation strategies, and we also have the Director General level policy dialogue. And next year, we're going to open up ministerial level policy dialogue so that we will have different levels of communication between the Ministry of Science and ICT and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So we already have a communication channel between the two ministries, so we expect a lot of active cooperation between the two ministries. Thank you very much for your kind answers. So that was the end of the Q&A session. During the presentation session, I understand some of the participants experienced some technical problems.
I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the official of the Ministry of Science and ICT and the diplomats from each country who are joining us today through the online. The material presented today will be sent as a PDF file. It will be sent to the emails of the representatives of the official residents and the emails of our online participants as well. Yes, today's Science and ICT Policy Day is held to share main policies in the field of Korea science and technology and ICT, promote future diplomatic cooperation with Korea, and aid in development of the international community. I hope today's session was informative and that our diplomats in Korea who participated online today had a meaningful time of cooperation. Lastly, I would like to go over the survey. We have sent a URL link to the survey to your emails. We will be uploading as well a URL as a YouTube channel box you are looking at today. So it would be appreciated if you simply respond to the 3 questions. Thank you very much for your cooperation. And also among the people who responded to the survey, 20 will be drawn and will be given a Starbucks mobile gift certificate. Thank you so much for your interest. And lastly, on behalf of the Ministry of Science and ICT, I would like to give my sincere gratitude. And we will host an event to invite you again next year. Thank you so much for watching. 감사합니다.